So perhaps this qualifies as too much information for the audience, but I'm going to release our recording date right now. Today is Cinco de Mayo. That's not when you're getting the recording. That's not when you're getting the episode on YouTube or Spotify or whatever. But that is the day that we recorded it. That is relevant because Cinco de Mayo is a very big day, a celebrated day here in America, celebrating everything about Mexico and Spanish culture and all that. So because of that, in celebration of the episode, Zach and I are going to do this episode in Spanish. Okay? Hola, me llamo Brian.
Hola, tú me llamo Zacchaeus.
All right.
Okay, I can't. Now I just...
Welcome to the show, everyone.
Oh, man. I just sound so racist just now because all I can think is it's the typical Spanish stutter, okay? It's the it's that thing. I just use a lot of that, and then I just say words that sound Spanish, and then I just, okay, there we go.
Anyone who is easily offended has already listened to us and decided to discard us as a possibility. Mm-hmm. And if they haven't, then wait till the end of this episode. But so that is a small little sliver of potential offense that we could commit to on this audience. Anyone who is not easily offended is still with us and probably just left that off.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, since we're on part 3 here, I'm pretty sure anyone who's offended is long gone by this point.
Exactly.
So yeah, that's a great point. That's a great point. Well, welcome guys to part 3 of our abortion series. Today we're going to be discussing the last couple things that we had hinted at back in episode 2. We're just going to finish out that discussion, talk a bit about Brian's opinion, talk a little bit more about some of the male perspective on this topic, and kind of see where the conversation goes, because there is some other areas we could touch on depending on how time allows. But just to get the housekeeping out of the way, my name is Zach. I'm one of the hosts here of the Value Added Podcast. Brian, the other gentleman there glowing with the sunlight, is Brian. Brian is also a host of the Value Added Podcast. Say hello, Brian. Introduce the sun to us all.
No, okay. We got to get this out of the way. Zach has been bitching about this since the moment we got on here, before we even started the recording. It is natural sunlight that is coming through the window behind me, and right now, because of the way the sun is positioned, it is coming through the window, and that's what you see behind me. But every now and then, it's going to turn, I guess, a normal color, the color of the wall, the gray-white color of the wall, because the sun goes behind a cloud or something. But Zach loses his mind when it happens. Yep. So that's all it is. I'm not changing the filter. I'm not messing with people. It is literally natural sunlight. I'm going to keep the natural sunlight because it's natural. And Zach, see, it's already starting to change.
Yes.
So Zach, yes. I'm not doing anything with the filter. This is literally natural sunlight. Zach has to get over it. You guys are probably fine with it. So please let him know. Encourage him to get over it because it's not a big deal.
Yeah. But yes, all that housekeeping out of the way. We're here back, part 3 of the abortion series. I'm strapped in. I'm ready. We'll see where the conversation takes us. Anything you want to add to that, Brian? Or perhaps I forgot something entirely.
I guess just to reiterate, there's 2 main things we want to get to. And depending on where we are in time after we get through those 2, we have a few other possible bullet points we can touch on a little bit. But there's 2 main ones. I don't worry about us getting to those 2 main ones, but they're 2 pretty important ones. So important that we decided just those 2 points alone was enough for us to add a part 3. Besides just the fact that it made the title work well, because I have the first trimester and the second trimester. So now we got the third. It'll be full circle. It'll be beautiful.
Yep, it's a full pregnancy right there. All right,
yes.
So jumping in from last episode, the end of last episode, we were talking about some of your opinion, your ideas about abortion, the legalization of abortion, the availability of abortion, as well as you started getting into some kind of practical aspects, like how the systems have been abused and how it's been taken advantage of by certain people, and how that's kind of muddied the waters in regards to what should or shouldn't be allowed, that kind of thing. So I'm interested to hear more about your thoughts. I will attempt to do my best to kind of follow up with some good questions so we can kind of dig down a bit more. If you guys are curious about my perspective on this topic, if for some reason you just stumbled across part 3, I talked pretty heavily in the first 2 parts about my perspective on this topic. As a blanket overview, I'm pro-life 100%. So, but if you want more details, definitely go back and listen to those episodes. Brian, take it away.
Yeah, I mean, anyone who's listened to any episodes between now and then is probably very familiar with your opinion on this. So it's not exactly a mystery. So I'll try to be more concise than what I was last time. Basically, despite how I may have come across on these episodes, or even in things I've hinted at in previous episodes, that probably gave you guys an idea of where I stood regarding abortion. So my opinion may be a little surprising. And that is, I don't think abortion should be banned. At all. Regardless of how I feel about it from a moral standpoint, regardless of how I look at abortion, I consider it an actual human life, and there's a sunlight again.
Wow, changed so fast, it's ridiculous.
Yes, it's like I'm snapping a finger and it's changing.
It's crazy.
Yes,
man, I've been recording with you for years. I swear I've never seen this before.
And it's funny that now we have video that it's like this, and hopefully, like we can both focus. Because now I'm distracted by it because of you.
All right. Out of my mind, it's out of my mind. All right.
That one was pretty cool though, the way it
yes, it was.
Okay, so even though I consider it a human life at conception, and therefore the termination of that life is the equivalent of killing a human life. Whether it's murder or not can get very sticky depending on the motivation and all that, but it's definitely the termination of an innocent human life. So I have moral quandaries with the idea of abortion, but I don't think it should be banned. Mainly because of the circumstances involved, in which I see that abortion might be, although tragic, necessary. Like the mother's life being at risk, or even though you could argue, as Zach has, that doesn't qualify as abortion because of the fact that the mother's life is at risk. Rape and incest, or even situations where those aren't involved, but because of other situations, you can understand why, as much as I disagree with it, as much as a difficult choice it is, how tragic it is and all that, you get why that decision gets made, and I'm not really the person who can make the judgment on them whether or not they do that. So because of all that, I think abortion should be allowed. However, the problem I have is that abortion being allowed has also been, as Zach said earlier, abused. And so I get why there's a push to get it banned. So it's like a nuanced answer. I don't think it should be banned, but I get why they're trying to ban it. Because it not being banned is being overused and abused to the point where the numbers are astronomical, and it doesn't matter what the number is of how many people do this, and depending on what side you talk to, they'll be very dramatic with their numbers. One side will say that 99% of people do it this way. The other side will say it's like 0.2%. Both of them are probably wrong, but regardless of what the number is, there are people who are doing abortions just because, they cheated on their boyfriend and then they don't want the boyfriend to find out, or they regret having the sexual act and they don't want the reminder of it, or they're not ready for a kid but they just want to continue to have sex, or whatever the reasons are that are based on being irresponsible, not taking accountability for their actions, being selfish, and because of that, an innocent child gets lost. I don't agree with that being a reason for abortion. And if my stance on it being not banned sticks out, then that kind of abortion is going to continue. We can't have that. At least this is what the argument seems to be. So we have to limit it or get rid of it entirely, because we can't be trusted to do things admirably, honorably, and somewhat fairly. So we have to get rid of it entirely. I said I was going to be concise and I wasn't, so I'm just going to stop there. But that is my somewhat complicated opinion on abortion to start off.
Okay. Number one, obviously, thank you for sharing. You hinted at some of the stuff in the previous episode. What I want to follow this up with, what you just said, is we talked about before the episode, maybe mentioning Roe v. Wade stuff in here. I'm not an expert. I don't think you're an expert either on this subject, but there is a very obvious big takeaway from Roe v. Wade, and I'm wondering how that kind of applies to your position. Basically, when Roe v. Wade went away, the decision on how we handle abortion dropped from the federal level to the state level. Okay, that's really the big takeaway from that decision. So, as the audience knows, we live in Florida. I don't know exactly what the laws here are in Florida for particularly what doctors are allowed to do, what they're not allowed to do. I'm no legal expert on any of that stuff. But the decision being brought down from a state-to-state basis kind of gives us more control on a local level rather than it being federal for like how we as Floridians want to kind of vote for our policies. I don't know. I guess what I'm kind of asking here is, do you think that that move is better based on your viewpoint of it? Because maybe this state's direction is more in line with your own personal view, although you don't want to project that on the rest of the country.
So in general, I think that things being left up to the states is a better way to go than federally. With the United States of America, so the states part is pretty relevant there, and because of a lot of people having different values, and this can be as simple as just like whether you're in city or country or anything like that, you have different things that you value, different priorities, whatever. So having a federal policy or a law that covers everybody is going to be very sticky, because there's going to be, no matter what law you put out there, there's going to be some group of people that are so against this policy or law that it has a negative effect in whatever way that can be. So limited to state by state is better than federally, because then the state, as an example, if it's in the Midwest state, they're going to have state laws and policies that are more conducive to what it's like to live in the Midwest, as opposed to California, where they're going to have laws that are more conducive to living in a state like California. So that kind of thing. So in general, I think state's better than federal. I don't know if it matters one way or the other regarding my position, because me saying I don't think abortion should be banned, well, some states are going to ban it, and some states are not going to ban it. So that doesn't really line up with mine in terms of I say I don't think abortion should be banned. Well, if a certain state does ban it, that completely goes against my opinion on it. Now, the difference between me and a lot of other people is if they do ban it, I'm not going to cry about it. I couldn't, because of the fact that I look at it as a human life, and I have moral disagreement with it. It won't bother me if they get rid of it. But so I guess that's the one difference I have compared to everybody else. But I don't know if it actually lines up with that opinion. It really can't. The best way it would work for my opinion like mine would be a federal law that completely allows it, which is what we had before Roe v. Wade.
Yeah, no.
As far as I know.
Oh, okay.
As far as I know.
Okay. All right. Yeah, and look, that's fair. I understand. I don't know how much power the states had before Roe v. Wade was overturned. Whether they had power to kind of change how at what point they made the definitions or change the specifics of what the state is allowed to do. I don't know how much power was kind of relegated up to the federal level that the state didn't have any control or say so over. I'm not an expert in this subject.
I don't either. So
pre Roe v. Wade or after, okay? I'm just not. I think the next thing I want to do is going back to kind of the more overview of this topic in general, I get the sense, Brian, that your position, and I mean, I've known you for a little while now. I get this to a certain extent. It seems to me that you don't want to project your view too much on other people to conform to your view. So you're basically the opposite of me, who's a dictator that would love nothing more than to conform the whole world to my worldview. So in that sense,
at least you're honest about it, Zach.
Yes, absolutely. Honesty is key. So yes, assuming that's the case, and again, I'm making some assumptions here, but assuming that's the case, you don't really want to push your view onto other people. Well, I wonder where that line is what I would say then.
I kind of do want to push my view onto others, but my view is that it's a human life at conception, and abortion is a taking of a human life, and in a large majority of circumstances, it's hard to justify the termination of that life for whatever the reason that woman has for doing it in most situations. Yep. That's my view on abortion for the most part. So in the second part, I guess, of my opinion that I didn't say yet would be, in my idealistic setup, it would be abortion is legal all the way up to 9 months. But the country as a whole is way more familiar with abortion. We're more on the same page with abortion. We kind of all view it in a similar way, to the point where, even though it's available, most people aren't even going to want to take that as an option because they view it the way I view it. So yeah. I would like it to be most people take my view, and therefore the fact that it's legal is irrelevant because they don't want to do it anyway. So it's forget about it being legal or illegal. It's not even something that you think about.
Yeah.
You don't even consider it because you're like, why would I consider doing this when it's a human life? And for most people who are on that pro-choice side, that's all it takes to flip them over would be to convince them somehow that it's a human life that's an innocent human life at the very beginning that has value, all those things, and that is more important than a woman's inconvenience or their life being destroyed even though she's not dying, or stop framing it as we're taking away women's rights and we hate women. If we take it away from that emotional appeal and just focus on the human life that's in the woman's womb that is going to be terminated, then a lot of this will go away because people won't even consider it. That's what I would like to see.
Yeah. I really hate making this comparison, and obviously correct me if I'm wrong because I'm no expert on the subject matter. The opinion you're talking about sounds a lot like the safe, legal, and rare stuff that was going on for the longest time. It was perpetuated by certain safe, legal, and rare. Have you heard of this?
Oh, no, I have not.
Referenced. So safe, legal, and rare was the old Democratic perspective on abortion. Old Democratic perspective was not what it is today. It was not celebrate your abortion. It was not, shout it from the rooftops, that kind of thing. It was the, yes, this should exist. Yes, this should be here. It's more kind of hush-hush. We don't really want to talk about it too much. We want it to be there as an option for people, but we don't really want to, we don't want to put it into the light of celebrating. Now the new Democratic Party is much different now because now it's all about the celebration and the expression of these kind of debaucherous acts, in my opinion. But yeah, so based on what you're saying, I can see where kind of you would land, at least on this one topic, kind of on the political sphere on that one. But what I want to do is I want to get into a little bit more of the nitty gritty here. Yeah, we could talk in abstracts all day long, but let's kind of hone in on a couple examples. I think it's going to help me understand your perspective. I think it's going to help, and it's not just about your perspective, but also give you the opportunity to explain your rationale a bit better. Maybe help you understand it too. Who knows? So I'll pose a situation, and I just want to kind of get where you stand on this. This first one I'll give you is just about, this one could be boiled down to inconvenience. Well, let me explain. You have someone you have a girl who's let's say she's just turned 18 years old, but she's already had 2 kids prior to being 18. She has a third pregnancy right now, and she was, let's say, even despite having the 2 kids, she was doing great in school, and she was right about to get her her nursing degree or something, or about to get into a great college. But based on how the pregnancy lined up, this third pregnancy, it's going to cause her to lose that opportunity to go to that college and get that degree and be able to take better care of her 2 children. Maybe she has this and she kind of poses it to her family or poses it to herself that the reason she is considering aborting her third child is because having this third child is going to put her on a pathway that all 3 of her kids at that point will have a worse life. I'm gonna make some assumptions here. She's a single parent, whatever. All of her kids are gonna have a worse life, not as much resources, not as much stability. But if she were to get rid of this third kid, she'd be able to give the other 2 above and beyond everything that they would need. She'd be able to focus on her career and take care of her life and set them up for a better thing. Really, it's a battle between prosperity versus some sense of moral duty towards your unborn child. I want to know your opinion on a scenario like this to kind of see where you fall.
Based on everything that you laid out, I would strongly disagree with an abortion in that situation. But again, me disagreeing with something is not a reason that something should be outlawed. I would be a very arrogant person and conceited person if I believed that me being morally against something is enough of a reason to ban something or outlaw it. That to me is a great example of inconvenience, and this is where your pro-choice loses me a lot. And this point I probably made clear throughout these 2 episodes about abortion, and even other episodes I mentioned it, that regardless of where this position is that I'm laying out now, the one thing that is very obvious is the pro-choice arguments drive me a little more crazy than the pro-life arguments, because a lot of them are silly, a lot of them are based on emotional appeal, a lot of them are inconsistent, so on and so forth. So this one that could be used is a woman's life is going to be ruined because of this child. so because of that, you justify killing the child. As if somehow being alive, but having your life not as good as you thought it was, is the same as being dead. Which is weird, because many people on that pro-choice side were also on the side of, who cares when it comes to COVID? Nothing is worse than death. At all. Loneliness, depression, not being able to see your family, losing your business. None of that matters because, well, as long as you don't die. But now when it comes to abortion, suddenly a woman's life well-being is equal to another life. So that's what I mean by inconsistency. I would have a major issue with that as far as inconvenience. And another thing to point out would be, the catchphrase that you see from the right all the time, or the pro-life side, adoption is an option. I'm sure you've heard that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And one of the pushbacks you hear is that, well, the children don't get adopted. From what I understand, and I haven't dug into every adoptions agency and all their books and so on and so forth. From what I understand, every single baby that gets put up for adoption gets adopted. The ones that don't get adopted are the ones who are put into foster care at 14 because their parents go to jail or something, or their parents die, whatever it is, and they're in foster care at 14 or 12 or whatever it is like that. Those kids don't always get adopted because I guess parents who are looking to adopt aren't looking to adopt someone who's 12. Just like if you're looking to adopt an animal, you want a puppy or a kitten, not a 15-year-old dog or a cat. That's usually how it works. So from what I understand, every baby gets adopted. Every single one. Usually by conservative pro-lifers, by the way. So the option there could be to put up for adoption, and it will get adopted almost instantaneously by somebody, and then that baby can have a different life, hopefully prosper, and so can you. So to me, that's a cop-out. That's my roundabout way of saying that's a cop-out.
Okay, yeah. Look, I obviously I don't disagree with you on this at all. It helps me understand your perspective. The only thing I will kind of give you a little pushback on is I get where you're coming from, by the way, but the idea that pushing your morality on somebody else is kind of a sign of arrogance. It's arrogant if there wasn't a basis for it. Sometimes if we kind of compare this to adults and children, our job as adults when it comes to children, our relationship to them is to guide them because they can't guide themselves. Okay, if you put a bunch of children together, they're not going to be able to function as society together. Okay, they don't have the capacity to understand these things, and unfortunately, even despite the fact that we say once you're 18 you're an adult, you can do everything. Legally speaking, that's true, but mental growth and your mental maturity, I suppose is the way I would put it, is not the same for everybody. So I do think that there is a lot of people in our country and in our world who have the mindset that is, if for lack of a better way of putting it, extraordinarily immature. Okay? Immature and short-sighted. Obviously, this podcast, we talk about this type of thing a lot. It plays its part in almost every aspect of life. So these people need guidance. So for the people who kind of spend more time to talk about these issues, to think about these issues, not only would I say it's not arrogant to kind of push your opinions kind of down the pipeline, but it's almost necessary in a way to do so, kind of like a moral obligation to lead and guide those who need the guidance and the leadership.
Well, no, first of all, as a side note, I just realized this shirt makes you look like Steve from Blue's Clues. But,
I was thinking it the whole time, man. I swear.
Okay.
I didn't want to say it.
I just realized that. Okay.
That's fantastic.
Yeah. Damn it. Okay. So, but remember, we're talking about two different things. My opinion on abortion is what I said at the very, very beginning of everything we said in this episode. That I consider it a human life, an innocent human life, and if you terminate the human life, that it could be murder, but even if it's not, you're still killing an innocent life. In most cases, I totally disagree with abortion. That's my opinion on it. But then I also say I don't think it should be banned. So I can push my moral opinion on it, but still maintain that it shouldn't be banned because that's a legal argument as opposed to a moral one.
Yeah.
So I think I can still push the moral one. And another thing about your scenario that's interesting is because this is where I'm probably gonna make a firm opinion that a lot of people aren't going to be very fond of, because one of the things that you hear, I don't know if pro-lifers do this, but you definitely hear conservatives say this a lot. You hear them preach the idea of, no sex until marriage, abstinence until marriage, things like that. And a lot of it, they get treated with with disdain, and they get scoffed at. What the hell? Like, why would you say that? How dare you tell people what to do and all that kind of moral grandstand and nonsense? But you know what happens when you don't engage in sex before marriage? You don't have to worry about this problem.
I know. Yep.
So, and I have maintained, I don't know if I said it on the podcast, maybe I have, but I'm a believer that, well, I should say I'm a believer, but it's more of a question, is what is the point of sex if it's not for procreation? Because the pleasures that you get from sex, as weird as it's going to sound, you don't need to do sex. You don't need to have sex with another person to do it. You know what I mean? Like, there's other ways to get those highs and feel those, the endorphin rush and all those other things. You don't need the actual sexual act to accomplish that if the goal is something other than procreation. So what is the purpose of sex other than procreation? Because if it's just about procreation, which is where my opinion comes in, that's really what sex should be. Sex for the sole purpose of procreation. Now, that doesn't mean it's going to work every time, obviously, but with the purpose being, we're having sex for the purpose of having a child. If that is the idealistic way that society viewed sex, the whole abortion problem would also go away, because we won't have these unwanted pregnancies for people who don't want to be pregnant but want to have sex.
This kind of reminds me of the George Orwell book that we reviewed way back when. It's been forever since we did that.
Way back when.
But obviously in that story, the 1984, the whole society, I think, I don't remember exactly, what did they all practice abstinence, or they could only have sex during like certain periods or something, or because didn't they try to have sex like in secret and they got caught, and then it wound up being the main characters did, but everyone else, I'm pretty sure, just wasn't doing it at all, or it was like this very, very controlled thing where they would artificially inseminate all the babies or something like that, and no one was even doing the act anymore in order to kind of deprive people of that. I have opinions when it comes to this kind of thing. I think for most people it's a lot more than just doing that. As a matter of fact, I think for most people, most of our society, the procreation aspect is kind of far down on the list, actually, of reasons why they want to have sex. It's most of emotional connection and obviously pleasures and all the rest. But despite your motivation, I talked about this a lot in episode 2, I think, it's about the consequences, right? So you kind of have to, you take one with the other, right? You're going to get something you're getting something you want. Well, there's consequences that are associated with that. Are you willing to accept those consequences, step up to the plate, do the right thing or not? The issue is, and again, this is not just abortion. Abortion is only one small example of a much bigger problem. People want what they want without consequence. We live in a day and age right now that just seeks pleasure to a degree in which I don't even know. I didn't live through history, so I can't tell you historically, 100, 500 years ago, what it used to be like for the older humans. But, the amount of pleasure seeking that happens today is eye-opening. It's very eye-opening, right? And it shows you that there's this, the hierarchy of needs basically goes food, water, pleasure. I think there are people out there who would rather have pleasure than shelter. Okay, food and water is a non-negotiable, but no house over my head, but I get to have all the pleasures in the world. They're going to choose it.
You got sex outside, yeah.
Yeah, so it's I think it's an ingrained problem, and getting away from that a bit more, practicing things like abstinence, especially when you're young or unwed, it's an important step. The big reason, or one of the many reasons why marriage is so important, is because it sets up a foundation to create a family. Okay. Without that foundation being set up and created, well, now you don't have that. So you end up with these women who like this guy, they have sex with him, they have a child, the guy walks out. So now her life is even harder than it would be just going through a normal pregnancy in a marriage. At least in a marriage, she has a husband to support her, take care of the bills, help to provide, change the smoke alarm, 9-volt battery, things like that you're just not going to have if you don't have the man in the house. And that's unfortunate. But this is a reality that many people experience. I think, in a way, I don't know exactly how this works across racial lines, but when it comes to abortion, I know that there are a lot in a certain demographic, the African American community, that does a lot of the abortions as well. And it really makes you think, what are the motivations going on behind the scenes that are playing the biggest part in these decisions? We can't just chalk it all up to economic opportunity and just say that, hey, these people don't have opportunity, because we already know that we have massive welfare systems that support and uphold these people. And, ask anyone who's on one of these welfare system or welfare programs, the more kids you have, the better. The government will give you more money. The government has more programs out there. Healthcare, milk, food, wipes, formula, all, you name it. There's programs for all of these things. You make less than a certain amount of money, you can get all these things. They're taking advantage of a lot. So it's the economic argument doesn't hold a lot of water. I think a lot of it has to do with responsibility, and even money not even being a consideration. A lot of these women who decide that they're going to get into these sexual relationships with men that are, let's face it, not the most reliable people, often end up regretting their decision far too late once they're already pregnant and have to deal with that consequence. So that's a bit of a tangent. Just some thoughts I kind of wanted to get out here. I wanted to bring something up to you as well, Brian, before we... You know what? I'll wait. We can do it after our break. We're going to take a short break here. We'll be right back. Hello, guys, and welcome to Random Advice with Zach. Today's advice is, you could say it's fitting with the episode, maybe not, but it's important advice that I want you to take into consideration. You've probably heard a lot about forgiveness throughout your life. Learning to forgive people, learning to forgive yourself for the things that you do that are wrong. Forgiveness is a skill, okay? And I think when I heard this the first time, it really kind of sunk into me the importance of practicing it, okay? Any skill that you have, let's say you're good at the piano, or you're great on the guitar, or you're great at sewing shirts or whatever. Those are all skills. The more you do them, the more you practice them, the better you get at it. With forgiveness, forgiveness is a skill that is actually pretty hard to do. It's hard to master. I don't think there's anyone out there who's actually mastered it completely, but there is a great reward on the other side, such as you learn to play the piano, you can play a beautiful song. You learn to forgive, you can live a happier life. There are lots and lots of people in the world who walk around angry, upset with themselves, upset with their neighbor, upset with their partners, whoever. I cannot believe I just said that, partners. Their spouses. Anyway, I'm getting indoctrinated by the left right now. There are plenty of people who get angry with everyone around them, and they hold on to these grudges, and these grudges have a hold on them as well. Okay? Now ask yourself this question: does a grudge, does a wrong that someone else ever did to you, is that holding on to you right now? Is it making you feel like you can't move on, or you can't get to the next step, or you can't be happy with whatever you're doing in your life? And if it is, and I have a feeling it's true for a lot of people, you need to learn to forgive. You could tell the person you forgive them. You don't even have to do that. You just have to be able to forgive, because the best power that comes from forgiveness is that you yourself will be able to move on. It's more for you than it is for the person who wronged you, because you want to have the power that you get to choose how you're going to forge your life. And that's not going to be someone else or something bad that someone else did to you that's going to hold you back forever. So yeah, my advice today is work on your forgiveness. Work on your forgiveness. Maybe start off small if you've just never been one to forgive anyone for anything. Start off small. Stop automatically attributing malice to the decisions that people make. Maybe somebody did something. Maybe somebody cut you off in traffic, but who knows? Maybe they had a good reason for it. So next time that happens in traffic, if your normal reaction is to yell, scream, flip them off, whatever, maybe next time that happens, just take a breath and think to yourself, maybe there's something going on here that I'm not aware of, and I forgive this person. But that's all for me. Back to the show.
Great advice, Zach. Once again, I have a hard time forgiving you, though, for constantly referencing whether or not the advice is related or not related to the episode. Because it's not supposed to be.
I know it's not supposed to be.
I keep telling you that.
I know.
So it doesn't matter whether it is or not. But that is good advice. I will say that one thing that I don't want to say I live by, because I really don't know what that means. People say that, but
It's your creed, man.
One thing that I guess do believe, at least to some extent, is forgive but don't forget.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Would you say that goes against your advice?
Not at all.
Because the not forgetting still leads to resentment, bitterness, lack of trust, things like that? Or is that kind of what you're saying?
No. Look, I am in agreement with you, but I don't think it leads to the thing that you just said. Not forgiving and not forgetting, right? I can forgive you for something you did that was wrong to me, but it doesn't mean that I'm going to allow you to do it again, okay? But at the same time, that doesn't mean that I'm going to sit on resentment or fear that that thing is going to happen again. I'll give you an example. Sam breaks into your house, okay? You've known Sam for years. You thought he was a good guy. You've had him over before, but you check your cameras. You know it's Sam. Sam broke into your house. He stole your valuables, okay? Now, what does it mean to not forget? What it means to not forget is you're not going to have your doors unlocked anymore. You're going to make sure your doors are locked. You're probably going to end that friendship. You're not going to continue that friendship. You're not going to continue allowing him to come over. That's not a lack of forgiveness there. That is you learning from the bad thing that happened, and that's okay. The forgiveness aspect comes into, Sam, I know that you made I know you made a bad decision. I know you made a bad choice. Maybe you regret it, maybe you don't. Whether you regret it or not is irrelevant. For me, I'm going to choose to forgive you, so I'm not going to stand for the rest of my life angry and resentful towards you for what you did. I'm not going to let that have control or power over me. But I won't forget in the sense that I will keep myself safer. And I will take myself out of those situations that are going to cause me harm later down the road. I think both things can exist at the same time.
Okay, that's a good way to put it. And but in my case, if I did you wrong, you will forgive me, but you also will forget because your memory sucks. So either way, I'm fine.
That's a good point, man. That's a good point. All right. I want you to go ahead and respond to what I was saying before there. I do have something I wanted to bring up, which I can't believe I haven't brought up in the first 2 episodes of this abortion topic. It just dawned on me when you were talking a few minutes ago, but we'll get to it.
And we still get to one more piece, so I guess I'll respond and then we'll get to the next thing.
Yep.
So let's just be crude for a moment because I hinted at it. There's multiple examples of this, but let's just come with the crude one. So when I go back to my question where I said, what is the purpose of having sex if it's not for the purpose of procreation? What is the goal? Because if it's for something along the lines, something that you consider pleasure, the pleasure of having sex, again, let's be crude. You can jerk off, right?
Mm-hmm.
I know that's crude, and people will be like, "Ew, you said that," but it is the same kind of pleasure for the most part that you get from sex. It's just by yourself, obviously. Well, hopefully, it's by yourself. Not like in a public facility, but and there's zero risk of anything, pregnancy, STDs, broken hearts, anything like that. So if it's just a pleasure thing, there's other options. Now, like I said, when I use the word pleasure, I'm not referring to just the masturbation, all that. There's endorphin rushes, all these different things that you can also get in different ways. So what is the goal if it's not procreation of sex that can justify having to do the sex but not wanting the child? That's the question I would ask. And there's another point that is not super important right now, so maybe I'll get to it later. But that's my response.
I'm wondering, do you want me to continue on this? Of course, I can say other things about this. Do you want me to continue on this train of
I mean, we can, but we have one other piece you have to get to, and then you said there's another thing that you thought of. Yeah. So let's try and get to those two.
We got time. It's fine. Just my.
What's the point of asking me that?
Because consent is the most important thing to me. You guys know this a little bit around the episode.
Yes. Zach's all about consent.
All right. All I'm going to say about I guess I'll end off my kind of perception on this. Yes, obviously, again, to be crude and crass or whatever, yeah, masturbation's an option. There are also other types of sexual acts that don't risk a pregnancy. There's also an incredible amount of contraceptions that exist in various forms, whether it's a pill, injections, implants. I mean, there's all kinds of things that you could do to help control pregnancies. For the most part, what's happening here is that men and women are having sex, and they're having unprotected sex. Okay, that's what's happening. That happens because that's what they want. They want to do that for whatever reason, or they can't wait to get to a CVS, and so they go ahead and do it anyway. And then the consequence crops itself up a couple weeks later when a pregnancy test comes back positive. So again, I think a lot of this comes down to irresponsibility, a pretty big level of immaturity, a lack of self-control. If we're talking about the prevention of a pregnancy, there's almost no excuse in the modern age at all for unplanned pregnancies. It's really hard to justify because there are so many ways that you can avoid it. And I agree with your points 100% when it comes to that. Obviously I have a different opinion when it comes to this, and in some regards, like, you know, I think that there's a lot more about an emotional connection and a sense of intimacy and things of that nature that drive people to want to do this. And again, I don't get me wrong, it's not like I don't understand these things. It's just there's a level of self-control that you need to have in order to prevent a bad outcome. And I mean, the worst outcome, in my opinion, is that you have a baby and you decide to terminate that baby by killing that baby in the womb. I think that's a horrible outcome. If the baby never existed, well, that's not murder. You know, not being pregnant, there's nothing nefarious about that at all. So I don't think that, you know, there are some cultures that think that prevention is a problem, that prevention is some sort of abortion. I think that's ridiculous. I think that's really ridiculous. Yeah, maybe there's people more pro-life than me in that sense. So, but I don't even begin to understand the concept of that. But yeah, that's my thoughts on that.
I don't know if that call it as a disagreement though, because what you did was answer the question that I asked, which was, what is the goal of sex if it's not procreation? Mm-hmm. I focus on one specific example of, you know, the pleasure aspect, and I said, well, if that's the case, then there's ways to do that without having any potential chance of pregnancy. Yep. You gave the emotional connection, the intimacy, and all that. That's a reason where if someone were to answer that, if someone were to have, they want to have sex, but they don't want to have a pregnancy, and I would say, what is the goal of the sex then? And they said emotional connection. I would accept that as a reason where, you know, okay, now I can understand why you two want to have sex with each other, because you want to have that emotional connection and intimacy. You also don't want to have the baby for whatever reason. So, if that's the case, that's where your point about having sex responsibly comes in which case it's not about procreation, but you can still do it responsibly. So I don't, that's not disagreement. That's literally answering the question that I asked.
Yeah, not a real disagreement here. But on something we might disagree on, I cannot believe I haven't brought this up in the first 2 episodes of this abortion series. But I remembered when you were talking a few minutes ago, I don't remember what you said that made me think of it, but it's the comparison between being pro-life and being pro-death penalty. I don't think I brought this up in any of these episodes. I think I've talked about it before on the podcast about the death penalty. This might come as a surprise considering my opinion on this topic, but I am in favor of the death penalty in a lot of cases. I think a lot more than what we have right now. I do think that it works as a deterrent. But I find it interesting that there's this idea that you can't hold both perspectives at the same time. If you're pro-life, it's impossible to be pro-execution or pro-death penalty. I would love to share my opinion on this, but I kind of want to get your thoughts on it first. What are your thoughts about death penalty? What are your thoughts about the death penalty, Brian?
I'm with you. I think that people who try to make that who say you can't have those two simultaneous positions is ridiculous. I'm not against the death penalty either, and even if it's not a deterrent, I don't care if it's a deterrent. The person who, let's say for the purpose of this, we all agree that this specific person deserves to be put to death. Mm-hmm. There's no doubt about it. Whatever. And if the argument is going to be, well, now it's going to deter other people from doing it, I don't care about that. That person deserves to die, so kill him.
Punishment.
So to me, it's as simple as that. Whether it deters future people is not. I mean, obviously that would be a bonus, but to me, it's as simple as that this specific person doesn't deserve to live anymore. So let's take them off the planet. Now you can argue that solitary confinement is a worse suffering for them than death penalty. Maybe that's true, but I've shed no tears. If the person deserves to die, then I shed no tears for them. But the idea that people who are pro-life can't be pro-death penalty is asinine. Because you're talking about an innocent baby who is 2 months old. I mean, literally 2 months old. Not 2 months from the time that they come out of the womb. Literally 2 months old in the development stage. Who has done literally nothing, positive or negative. But in this case, we'll say negative. They've done nothing to warrant being killed. Mm-hmm. And then you have a serial rapist or a serial murderer who's killed 40 women.
Yep.
And so for a person to say, let's not kill that innocent baby, but let's kill that serial murderer rapist. Somebody said, "Oh, no, you can't say both." Yes, you can, very easily. So that to me, that is a crazy argument.
Yeah, I'm with you 100%. I obviously I found myself wondering more and more why people think the way they do, and people seem to
find a loophole. It's trying to find a loophole.
It's trying to find a loophole, but it's almost as if they think in absolutes. So
yes.
if it's pro-choice, then it must be pro-choice for everything. But even in that vein, I mean, we talked about this in one of the episodes. We talked about the COVID vaccines, the mandates for it. Which side of the political aisle was pushing stronger for mandatory vaccines for everybody? Forget stronger. Which was the only political party pushing for mandatory vaccines for everybody? Right. It was Democrats, and Democrats are the ones who are completely pro-choice. That is their side that they've latched onto. So, no, it's not. Even when I try to come up with theories like I just did, that it's about this kind of blanket rule across the board, even that falls apart. It really is the ultimate version of cherry picking. You're just cherry picking each little thing that you want. You're making your decisions arbitrarily. This is one of those times where I wish that we had a third person on this podcast who was, let's say, far left or very left-leaning in their political ideologies, especially on things like immigration, death penalty, abortion, that kind of thing, because I'm curious what thoughts they would have for this. And this is a great opportunity as well, just to plug our email one more time, as I do all the time, valueadded.cb@gmail.com. If you are one of these people, and you're somehow still here listening, thank you, by the way, but email us, because I'm curious to see what your thoughts are on this type of thing, on this double standard, on this cherry picking. Back over to you, Brian.
Yeah, it's I've said this before, many times about abortion. The argument around abortion is stupid. I said at the very beginning of the first abortion episode. I've said it in pieces of other episodes. I said it outside the podcast. The abortion topic itself is not stupid. It's a very important topic. The argument around it is stupid because people are arguing two different things. And another reason why is what Zach just touched on. Because everyone operates in this binary that everyone, and we're supposed to pretend that's how the perspective on abortion exists in this binary, where you're pro-choice or pro-life, and there's no in between. So if you're pro-life, that means you're 100% against abortion under any circumstances, and therefore you don't care if the mother's life is in danger. You want the baby's life saved and all that, and you don't care about women. And if you're pro-choice, then it's you can choose to do whatever you want with your body at all times and kill babies and kill babies and kill babies. Obviously, there are people who probably think both of those things, but there's so much nuance in the middle that doesn't fall under either of those pro-life or pro-choice categories, and yet we put them in there anyway. So when you do that, the whole argument becomes an argument of division rather than the actual trying to see the nuance involved. Because once you see nuance, people don't see the nuance. They see, oh, you're on that side. You just jump to the other side now. No, I'm not. I'm just literally seeing the nuance that it does exist. You just choose not to see it. But the death penalty thing is very interesting because for anyone who argues that people who are pro-death penalty but also pro-life are being hypocritical, which, as we talked about already, is asinine, interesting that you, who for making this argument, you probably are against the death penalty. So you value the life of a serial murderer rapist more than an innocent baby.
Yes.
Just saying. So, I love pointing this out because the left, way more than the right, likes making the moral superiority claims. They make a position of, I'm the moral superior one, I'm the virtuous one, I'm better than you morally, so on and so forth. So whenever I get a chance to call out their moral inferiority, I love to. And in this case, if the two choices are, I'm favoring a baby versus a serial murderer versus the other way, guess which one is a morally superior? Just saying.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's really funny when you put it like that because, man, it paints quite the picture. It paints quite the picture of the motivation. And it's funny how these things kind of line up in such a way where you find yourself in a camp that wants to kill the babies and doesn't want to kill the murderers. That's a really crazy camp to line up in. I wanted to make a quick point because I've said this
because you're a murderer yourself.
Yes. Well, I want to say this. I've said this before on the podcast. By the way, take a shot every time we say today that we've said this before in another episode. It's a lot. But I said this before on the podcast about the kind of where we draw the line. I think we did an episode a while back about what political side we fall on. We did like a test or something. We did like a video or an episode where we took a test on the podcast. And in that it was it's a spectrum in a way. It's kind of where you lean more towards this way or the other. In the abortion topic, I think I would really, and this is again my opinion only, but I think the key defining difference between pro-choice and pro-abortion, pro-choice or
Life.
pro-choice or pro-life. Okay, pro-life, your top priority, your highest priority is the life of the baby. Okay, if your highest priority is the life of the baby, then you are pro-life. If your highest priority is the choice of the mother, then you're a pro-choice. Okay, and it all depends. Everything else falls below that. So there's lots of gray. Right, there's lots of gray that go underneath that. Some things are more important to others. You could take two people who are both pro-life. They got a lot of different opinions, and that's fine. It just all comes down to which is the most important aspect of this conversation. Is it the pro-life? Is the life the most important thing that you try to protect? Or is it choice the most important thing that you try to protect? Take a look at someone, like The View, for example, the women on The View. We know where they fall, okay? Their most important thing to them is the ability to choose. Even if the ability to choose leads to more death, okay? And on the other side, pro-life is, I want to save lives, even if that leads to less people making the choices they want. That's the distinction, I would say.
That's a great distinction. And by the way, just to clarify, those people on The View or anyone, you can say that their priority is people to choose, because as we talked about the COVID vaccine, that's not always the case. Their high priority is the woman to choose an abortion, just in the case of abortion. So even within their own, at least like the pro-life, their priority is the baby. For the most part, that's pretty consistent, even if you go outside of abortion, where that's their priority. But with the pro-choice, their pro-choice only seems to exist when it comes to abortion, and then after that, it doesn't really matter anymore unless they agree with the choice. And that's why I've always said, I don't think I've said it on this podcast, but the pro-choice, another way to say it is more accurate, is I approve all choices unless it's a choice I disagree with.
Yeah,
because that's really what pro-choice means.
Which is a very fair thing to do. I want to point out something real quick. You just said not on this podcast. Are you implying that you have another podcast that you would like to tell the audience about?
So the next thing we want to get into when it comes to abortion is because we went on that first point almost 55 minutes. So let's get into this last thing real quick. And yes, I did purposely avoid your question. This is the part that people don't like to talk about, especially on the highly sensitive left side, pro-choice side, which is the men when in the abortion conversation, particularly the man that's involved in the pregnancy, the father of the baby.
Yeah.
What role, what responsibility do they have? Now, the pro-choicers, especially the vicious ones, are going to say none, or they could say that. They could say none. The man has no say, even the father of the baby. Now, these same women a lot of times also say the men have no say in abortion whatsoever until a man comes out and says women have the right to choose. Stop trying to take away women's rights. It's not a human life. And then it's, oh yeah, listen to that guy. Listen to that guy. And then a woman says the opposite and says, it's a human life. It's abortion is murder, and it's shut up, bitch. So they don't really. It's not about man or woman because of who has an opinion. It's, are you agreeing with me? That's really what they mean. But I'm gonna give Zach the floor here. But that's the last question we want to try and answer here right now.
Yeah. The problem here is that we kind of wait till the end of this episode, and I have a lot to say about this topic, mostly because men are not talked about almost at all in this conversation. They just get swept up under the rug as if they're an afterthought. Let me obviously say this for anyone has an IQ under 40. It takes a man and a woman to have a child, okay? A biological man and a biological woman, it takes that to have a child, okay?
Wait,
that's
what?
just biology. Yes, it's
really?
It's true. Confirmed here today on the Value Added Podcast. But the reason this is important is because, kind of just like what you said, Brian, but to take it a step further, men don't get any say whatsoever in the process of, should we get an abortion? Should we not get an abortion? However, men have the responsibility, legally speaking, to take care of that child if that child is born. So, let's be honest here. The vast majority of abortions are abortions of inconvenience or convenience, depending on how you look at it, right? It's because I don't want this inconvenience, I'm going to get rid of this child. Well, how many times do you think a man has had the same thought? How many times has a man had the same thought and said to himself, man, I was just about to start my career. I'm about to go into the military. I don't want to settle down yet and marry this girl. You know, we had sex outside of marriage. I don't want to marry this girl. I wanted to go, you know, have some fun around the town, meet some other women, do some other stuff. There are lots of men out there like that. I don't particularly have respect for these type of men, but they exist. Do they get a choice? Is it their opportunity to say, you know what, I'm just not ready for this responsibility. I want you to go ahead and kill that kid. No, because, and here's what's so funny to me. And I say funny in the most not funny way I could think of. Any time that you hear a story about a man who's pushing for an abortion and a woman doesn't want to get it, it's a horror story. Anyone who's going to cover that story is covering it in the most negative light possible. You couldn't imagine. It's all the dark themes, the dark music, the CNN reporter. It's the worst thing that's ever happened. That a man wants the woman to get an abortion when she doesn't want to. Crazy, right? But it happens in the reverse all the time. All the time. It's not even close. It happens in the reverse all the time. The woman doesn't want to have the child. Maybe the man does. Maybe he doesn't. It doesn't matter. She doesn't want to have the child, so she doesn't. The question boils down to, okay, what's fair here exactly? Well, it takes two people to make the baby. Yes, the woman has to carry the baby. She has a greater responsibility during the pregnancy in that case. But does that mean that she has a greater moral permission structure, I suppose, I don't know the best way to put this, to decide to terminate that pregnancy without the man's input or consent? I can tell you from a legal standpoint, our laws don't give a damn about the man's opinion at all. They don't care at all. I don't think I've ever heard of a situation where a father had to sign off on an abortion. Ever. And I wonder why this is. You know, you could obviously make arguments about, oh, well, there's plenty of women out there who get pregnant and the man's not even in the picture. But what if he is? What about situations where maybe she's married to this guy and they have documentation that shows that they are married together, yet she can still go in while married and pregnant and get an abortion without her husband's consent? That's pretty crazy, right? I you know, these are decisions because it's not just you who has this child. Both of you have invested something into creating this child. There should be some stake in the man. Now, I can't tell you today on the Value Added Podcast whether or not I think it should be a 50-50 signing here. This obviously is one of those areas that get a lot more gray. If you were trying to make legislation about this somehow, it would be really difficult, and it would be something you'd have to sit down for weeks, months, whatever, really hashing out a ton of details to be able to get a good proposal out there for how to handle this going forward. I'm not going to pretend like it's an easy topic. But I think it is one that needs more attention, because if we're going to play this game of anyone can go out and get an abortion whenever they want, maybe there should be some kind of consent structure, or if we're going to keep it the way it is right now, then men should be able to opt out of the responsibilities of the baby before and after birth.
Yeah, I mean, it goes
the same
back,
way a woman can.
It goes back to the Dave Chappelle joke. You know, if you can kill the kid, I can at least abandon him. I can at least abandon him. So, I guess there's 2 points I want to get into with this. Number one, the most importantly, the way Zach just set up that whole abortion thing is how it is right now. Women can get an abortion without the man's consent. Men have, doesn't matter whether the man wants it. If the woman wants an abortion and the man doesn't, even if the man says that, like, you don't have to contribute at all. At all. You can go away and live your own life. All you gotta do is carry the baby. I'll take care of everything. The woman can still abort the baby, and the man has no say. But the man has no opt out as far as financial. The man doesn't. If the woman wants the baby, but the man doesn't, the man can't say, I'm not paying for this kid. Fuck that. He's obligated by law to do it. So my question is, and it's especially aimed at the people, feminists and all that, who yell and scream about lack of equality and men dominate and lack of privilege. How is what we just described not a woman privilege? And if you say that it is, well, if you say that it isn't, I would love to hear your argument as to how it's not. But if you acknowledge that it is, then that weakens a little bit the idea that men have all this power and all the privilege, because they clearly don't. And as a side note unrelated to abortion, I would love to know something that men can opt out of that women can't, or something along these lines that are similar, that a man is that a woman's obligated to do that a man's not obligated to do, because there's also a draft, but a man's obligated to do and a woman's not. So again, how is this not privileged for women? That's conveniently left out. But the other thing is, the man that Zach described, the guy that doesn't want to take responsibility for the pregnancy, wants to continue to go out and meet new people and have sex with different girls and so on and so forth. How are you, not necessarily you, Zach, just you, the audience, how do you judge a man like that? You don't have to get into the specific details of what words you would use. Positively or negatively? Do you think this is a good guy? Not a good guy? Do you think he's kind of a sleazebag? A pig? So on and so forth? Okay. Now, the reason I bring that up is because which type of guy is more likely to do what Zach just described? Somebody who's pro-choice or somebody who's pro-life? Even if they don't know what exactly what their opinion is, because maybe they haven't thought about it. Somebody who believes in the value of a human life, you can't kill the kid because it is a baby at conception, the value of marriage and all that, having sex for the purpose of procreation, those type of things. Is that man likely to have sex with you, get you pregnant, and then abandon you? As opposed to a guy who is all about sex for pleasure, do what you want, live your life, man, do all that. Is that guy more likely to have sex with you and abandon you? My point is, the guy that many times you criticize in a negative way is the very guy that you're more likely to attract, because they're on the same side as you with this whole, when it comes to sex and choice and abortion, all that kind of stuff. So the type of guy that you say that you want, the problem is they have a different view on something like abortion. That might be the only reason, but this is my way of saying you actually probably agree with those, or at least you're more, you like those type of men way better, even though that you don't like their opinion on abortion. So maybe put your opinion of abortion or who they voted for or any of that crap aside. At the end of the day, that's the type of guy that you probably want. You just don't want to admit it.
There's a thing, and it's gone. I don't even know when this started. Probably the dawn of humankind, I guess. Women want the bad boy, but they want the bad boy to be a good boy. Right? That's the problem. Right? They want the bad boy with the,
that was a great way to word it.
Motorcycle. They want the bad boy with the motorcycle, the spiky hair. Hanging out at the back of the school or whatever the hell the situation is, but they want him to be loyal to her and loving and kind and caring and a good husband and all that. And look,
and it's like, oh my god, I get it. How did that not happen? It makes no sense.
Yeah. Right, exactly. No, I can fix him. That's what you hear all the time. So, yeah, the problem is, you get what you get, and you kind of, there are signs there before you get what you get. Look, here's the thing. We're at the end of the episode. I want to do something real quick. This is the end of the trimester. The baby will be born by the time this episode's over. So what we're going to do here, I'm just going to take a quick moment just to reiterate my views on abortion in the shortest possible way I can as a cherry on top for this series that we're doing. I believe in pro-life. And what I mean by that is that my highest priority is life. My highest priority is the life of the baby. It's not about your personal choice. It's not about your personal inconvenience. There are lots and lots of reasons why people get abortions. I understand that. Most of the arguments that are used on the side of pro-choice are really weak arguments. We've gone over a lot of that throughout these episodes. Of course, you guys should go back and listen to these episodes if you haven't had a chance to. But ultimately, I believe that life is the most important thing that we should seek. Now, your degree of buy-in in this camp, so to speak, is up to you. To everyone is different. Are you all in? Are you one of these people that think that contraceptives are a form of abortion, which I think is ridiculous? Or how far along are you? How far into this are you? How many trimesters are you into this into this camp? All right, enough pregnancy jokes, okay? But yes, I'm pro-life. I think that the pro-choice side is misguided at best. Okay, and at worst, malicious in a sense, and I really think that there's a lot of knowledge that's missing here. I think there's a lot of information that's being perpetuated, and an idealistic view that's not in line with reality. When we look at science, when we look at the truth, the facts on the table, we realize there's life begins at the point of conception. This is an important distinction that I think needs to be got across. If there's nothing else that you can get across from everything we've talked about in these episodes, from my perspective especially, life begins at the point of conception. Life is precious. And yes, the life is more important than your choice to go to the bar next weekend.
Well said, Zach. I guess I'll do the same thing. From a moral standpoint, I'm clearly pro-life. There's no doubt about that. As I say with my opinion, though, from a legal standpoint, it gets a little more tricky. But that's not even the main thing I want to reiterate. I want to reiterate what I stressed back in the first episode, which I think would be it's very helpful if people realize this, because a lot of the fights will go away. The argument about abortion is stupid. The argument, the way it's being argued. The topic itself is not stupid at all, but the way it's being argued is stupid because both sides argue two different things and pretend that they're not. And as I demonstrated in the first episode, I won't do it again, but if both sides look at it from one side only, you'll probably agree on 99% of the perspective, and vice versa. The problem is both sides are speaking two different languages and pretending they're speaking the same language. As Zach made the analogy in the first episode, one side's playing football, one side's playing basketball, and you're on a hockey. You're on a hockey rink.
Exactly.
And you're trying to. Well, I had the hockey rink part, but and everyone's trying to wonder why nothing's clicking, because we're all doing different stuff. So that's the point I want to get across. Forget about my opinion. That's the main thing I want to get across. The argument is stupid. If people actually looked at the perspectives as the actual perspectives instead of projecting your own stuff into it, you would find that neither side is, well, maybe not the pro-choice side, but especially the pro-life side, is not as evil as you think they are. Because if you took their perspective, you would agree with them too.
Yep, exactly. Well said. All right, guys, we are going to end this series of our abortion conversation. Look, this is not, it's obviously not the happiest conversation to have, but I think it's a very important one. And here on the Value Added Podcast, we like to talk about important things, silly things, and everything in between. So we have a large library, well over 100 episodes that we have already out for you guys, most of which is on Spotify exclusively. But as you can see here, we are on video, we are on YouTube and Spotify now. So you can feel free to subscribe here on the YouTube channel or on Spotify. Make sure you interact with those comment sections or polls on the episode, and interact with us. Let us know your questions and thoughts. You can also email us at valueadded.zb@gmail.com with any questions, comments, or concerns. And remember, folks, we upload every Friday at 8 a.m. Brian, I got it down now. So yes, every Friday, 8 a.m., we're going to upload a new video. There's lots of great, interesting conversations to come. And ultimately, we want you guys to be a part of it. In this abortion topic, this is the last episode we're going to do for a while. Maybe next year we do something else for it. Who knows? But the conversation doesn't have to end here. Okay? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. I'll be down there. I can respond to some stuff, and we can continue on the conversation. So that's all for me. Thank you guys for being here. I appreciate it, and I will see you all Friday at 8 a.m.
And I will no longer be wearing this shirt. I'm not going to look like Steve from Blue's Clues again, so that's it. So long.
Bye-bye.